Welcome back to the program. Take a look at this picture. He is 40 years old and she's 11, and they're married. Indeed, there are over 51 million child brides around the world today, and it's not just Muslims, it happens in other religions and across cultures and regions. Photographer Stephanie Sinclair has gone around the world investigating and documenting this phenomenon, which is, of course, often a crime. I recently talked to her about the incredible stories featured in the book called Questions Without Answers: The World in Pictures by the Photographers of Seven. Stephanie Sinclair, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's go to Yemen and let's go to this picture. It is actually startling. You see these much older people with these children.
Yep.
Describe what's going on here. Who are they?
These are two young girls, Tahani and Ghada. They're sister-in-law in Yemen, and these are their husbands. And this was during a day that the husbands had come home in Yemen from working. They were both in the military, and so they came home and they were spending time with their family, and I was able to photograph them.
I think you recorded one of them. We're just going to play some of what one of these little girls, this little girl, told you.
Okay.
They were decorating my hands with nugs, but I didn't know they were going to marry me off. Then my mother came in and said, "Come on, my daughter." They were dressing me up and I was asking, "Where are you taking me?"
I mean, I think that's what's so heartbreaking about this, that they often don't know what's happening to them, and they're told that we're going to a party or we're going to a celebration, and then this happens. Did they express how they feel about it?
Well, most of the young girls, particularly like these two girls who are preteen, I mean, that's where you really see that they don't know what's happening to them, and the only time they really understand what's happening is on their wedding night, unfortunately. And, you know, I think that it's just this harmful traditional practice of child marriage is just so embedded in some of these cultures that the families don't protect them as they should.
And they, as you said, they don't know anything, and then here's this young girl. How old is she?
This is a young girl named Asia, and she's 14 here. She already has 2 children in this photograph.
2 children. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the newborn.
Yeah. And this
there you have in the corner there, yeah.
And she was still actually, you know, was bleeding still from her birth of the child, and she didn't really know what was happening to her body. And you know, it just shows that there wasn't a lot of education out in these villages to tell them what was happening and what to expect.
Well, when you went to do this session, I mean, they must have known that, you know, you didn't approve of it or this was something that wasn't right. Was there a sense that they got it, that this wasn't right, their parents or the kids?
Absolutely. I mean, this whole project, I've been working on this for about 9 years now, and this whole project was done with the help of the people from these communities. So all the access I got to each of the families was through the people who wanted this to stop because they could see the harmful repercussions.
That's kind of interesting because usually you might find yourself sort of blocked out from the community. I mean, did the men know? Did the parents know? How did that work? How did they give you permission to do it?
I was very straightforward. I mean, you know, I went to them and I told them what I've been working on. I've showed them pictures that I'd made previously on the topic, and I was just very honest with them that, you know, we're working together hopefully to bring solutions and to help their communities prosper. At the same time, we also have serious issues in our country, and I was you know, I made sure to point that out. You know, for them, we have kids who get pregnant at 13 and aren't married. That's even worse.
You mean here in the United States,
here in the
United
West.
States.
Exactly. So they think that that's even worse because there's nobody to protect them. So, you know, I was very candid with some of the issues we have as well.
And then this is an amazing picture. This young girl, she actually got a divorce. I mean, look how young she is. Tell me about her, how old, how she managed to get rid of this man.
This is Najud Ali, and she was married when she was 10 years old. And this is just a shocking story because she went, a couple months after she was married, she went to the court and found a lawyer, a woman named Shada Nasser, and asked her to help her get a divorce, and she was granted.
How rare is that? I never, ever heard of something like that.
Absolutely. It's definitely rare. And it basically, I mean, Najud became kind of international symbol of child marriage, because she was able to do this and found it within herself. And I think she's inspired a lot of other girls and also other organizations to support these girls to have a stronger voice.
Well, this is Afghanistan. I mean, again, you know, you can hardly believe this is real. This ancient man with this child that barely looks like she's 5. How old is this girl?
She's 11.
11 years old. And what's expected to happen? Are they meant to consummate the union? Is the girl a slave in the house until she comes of age, or what?
Yes, on both accounts. I mean, you know, what I was told when I was there is that the girls would wait till puberty and they wouldn't consummate the marriages, but the women brought me aside and said, you know, they will. Once the girls are their property, there's nothing they can do.
They're forced.
They're forced. And the bigger tragedy, I mean, not that that's not a huge tragedy, but the biggest tragedy is that this young girl, she wanted to, she was still in school, and this is like rural Afghanistan where we've been pushing so hard and people want education for these young girls, and this was in a very rural area, so something good was happening. And then she was pulled out of school as soon as she was married. I mean, as soon as she was engaged, not even married.
But here, this is really interesting, I think, because there are some brave people in Afghanistan who simply won't tolerate this. And this was one of the police commanders, a rare female police commander. Tell me about this story, because she's obviously come after this guy.
Yes, this is Malalai Kakar. She was a very, very special woman, and she knew the project I was working on and called me when she got this case. I was actually in Kandahar here, and this young girl, her name was Jamila, and she had been stabbed several times by her husband, and just for trying to go visit her mother without his permission.
That's it?
That's it. That's all she did. And
this being the husband?
And that's the husband. And so I actually sat down, I was sitting there talking to them, and I asked Malalai, I said, what's going to happen to this man? And she just kind of laughed and went, nothing. Men are kings here.
Malalai said that?
Yeah, and she couldn't really do anything, but
not even arrest him?
She couldn't even arrest him, but she was very...
With blood all over the scene of the crime?
Yep, and he also stabbed her grandmother, but she was happy to just have him out there. You can see by the way she's holding him that she's like, at least you can photograph him and show everyone what's happening.
But here also, this touched me very, very deeply. This young girl has obviously been rescued.
Yes. This is at a shelter in Afghanistan, and this was actually one of the moments where I was like, I'm going to work on this project for as long as it takes. This is a young girl, her name's Mijgon, and she was married at 11 years old. Her father was a drug addict and sold her for heroin, and she ended up...
Her father sold her to get his fix?
Yep. And so she was married and obviously treated very terribly and ended up running away, and she ended up at this shelter in Herat, and I was just talking to her, and these girls just wanted to share their stories, and she said to me, in my whole life, I've never felt love. And I was just like, I couldn't even imagine what that would be like. She was so beautiful and so sweet, and they actually, you know, more solutions needs to come, because they ended up having to send her back to her father.
And of course, it's not just in the Muslim world that this happens. You went to India. These are Hindus.
Yes. What
is happening to this little girl?
This is a really sweet young girl named Rajani. She was 5 years old, and they had a marriage in the middle of the night.
Literally under cover of night?
Literally at 4 o'clock in the morning, actually. And her 2 older sisters were married to 2 other boys. So it was 3 siblings marrying 3 other
And for
siblings.
what reason? Is it tradition? Is it for money? Is it to get rid of the girls? What is it?
It's for tradition. It's often you see these group marriages because the families can't afford to have 3 weddings. Just like here, weddings are so, you know, take all the expenses people have.
And here's the wedding.
Yes, and it's very, you know, for them, even though this is at night by a fire, it's still a lot of expenses
because of the clothes. But look, it's not. This is a small boy as well. It's not like one of those old men in Afghanistan.
No, and that's one of the main things I wanted to cover in India and Nepal, was that some of the times the boys are also young too, and often they're victims just as much of this harmful traditional practice.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, I mean, of all these wonderful pictures of yours that we've selected, we selected some from Ethiopia because, again, this just looks like an abduction. I mean, this girl is wrapped up, put on a mule, and taken away in the desert. Is that what you found there?
Yes, and this case was interesting because this girl actually kind of accepted her fate, and she said, you know, she was excited about being married. She was also 14, but at the same time, she also didn't know what that totally entailed. And so they wrapped her up and they took her away by mule. And I asked the groomsmen in this wedding, I said, why do you cover her face like that? And they said, just in case she wants to run away, she won't be able to find her way home.
Wow. What do you hope to achieve with this reportage?
I think it's a matter of just showing them that if these girls aren't educated, if they're taken out of the population and just forced to work at home, that their communities suffer as a whole.
And of course here, so much of what happens, the rapes, the abuse, I mean, these are crimes. It goes beyond culture.
It is, but at the same time, I want to point out that this is an issue in more than 50 countries around the world. And even in our own country, we have had issues of it as well, and still do. And so nobody's really exempt from it, and so it's a harmful traditional practice that is slowly changing. We just want to have it change even faster.
Stephanie Sinclair, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.